6:01, just to let you all know, we're trying something new. I'm down in San Antonio where we did a basic instructor course for TTPOA this week. And David Mahula of Slick 0321, right? 0321? Yes.
Yeah.
I'm very sleep deprived, so there's a good chance I'm going to start speaking in foreign languages and I won't even know what I'm saying, but that should make it more interesting. We're excited tonight. We're going to have Scott Savage on of Savage Training Group. We're going to be talking about how to make training change stay once somebody leaves. So David Mahula has a lot of experience with the opposite of that, where he instituted change in his agency. I'm going to give him a minute to introduce himself, and then we'll have, when Scott Savage pops on, we'll be able to have a good conversation about how we can make training change stay once we leave an agency or we leave an organization.
It's a lot better.
So, David, do you want to take a minute and introduce yourself, and especially where we're at?
Yeah.
We're in a special place today.
Yeah, for sure. Name's David, owner of Slick Training Solutions. We're here at a local shop that I work closely with and have a very good working relationship and partnership with called Red Status Gunworks, located just outside of San Antonio, Texas in Lavernia. These guys specialize in some high-end firearms, a lot of high-end custom work, and do a lot of good stuff with local law enforcement and things like that as well.
Yep. And they were very kind enough to leave the store open for us tonight so that we could include them when in our conversation today. We need a place to, hold on a sec. You keep talking, David. I got to send a message real quick here.
No, you're good. So just a little bit of my background real quick. Spent 10 years Marine Corps reconnaissance, and then went on from there and did 20 years in law enforcement for San Antonio PD. Worked a bunch of different positions there, patrol. Was on the gang street crimes pop unit there for 9 years, and then went over to the academy, became a firearm instructor over the past 6 years, and trying to implement a lot of changes into on that side of the house on firearm standards and what they should be for law enforcement.
Excellent. And we have Wild Bill Brasky, Bill Forster. You've popped on. Thank you very much, bud. It's good to see you.
Me. Yeah, it's good to see you too. How was your trip? I'm in the truck now, but I should be home in a little bit. I'll transition to the garage.
Yeah, that's fine. The trip was great. I'm, like I was saying a little earlier, I feel a little sleep deprived. We've had a very busy week. I discovered last Wednesday, and this happens to a lot of instructors. Last Wednesday, as I was preparing for this course that we're doing on Monday, I realized I was doing it all wrong. So I'm in Berlin in this little tiny place on a hard chair. I'm working on presentation for conference, and then I'm like, I've got to retool this entire 1 week course on basic instructor. So I literally landed Saturday 8 p.m. in Houston. Took a bus back up home to Bryan. Went to bed 45 minutes later. Woke up at 4:10 because I was just having anxiety. Worked till 4 p.m. and then drove down to San Antonio. So my wife has decided that I'm not traveling for a while, but we got the class done. Nobody cried. Nobody had a heart attack. But so we had a good class. I think it went off pretty well. But it was the first iteration of a new basic instructor course, and the first iteration is always kind of bumpy. And someone who knows this more than probably anybody else I've talked to, Scott Savage has joined us. Thank you for coming on with us, man.
Hey guys, how are you?
We're doing well. You've already heard my story, so I'm not going to. But yeah, we're really grateful that you were popping on with us tonight. And you, by the way, Jamie got home from San Antonio. He was here for alert training. Got home and found out that his wife had planned a sweet little weekend for him. So, family first. So we have David Mahula has joined us in lieu of Jamie. But yeah, we're happy to have you here, man.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me.
So to kick off, one of the things that I picked up, I watched your podcast on Scott Howell. Scott Howell connected us. We've had some good conversations. One of the things I was really impressed with was, and really stuck with me, is you have experience in developing training programs. And then when you've moved on, those training programs stuck, right? And that's a rarity. You know that, right?
Yeah, it is. It's easy. Well, it's not easy. It's hard to change the sort of turn the battleship of law enforcement. It's very hard to change directions. And when it comes to law enforcement training, and I think when you're trying to do it in your own department, maybe that's the hardest place, right? Because it's kind of hard to be a prophet in your own land, maybe. But the agency that I just retired from, we were able to, I'll use the word transform our in-service training from sort of block and silo, stuff that everybody dreads into something different that was interleaved and holistic and all that good stuff, and incorporating motor skills with cognitive learning. And it was great training. It was awesome training and it looked really cool. But the biggest measurement really is, did it affect performance on the street? Which it did.
Yeah.
We would watch body-worn camera footage back and be like, hey, there's transfer. They're repeating the behaviors that we wanted them to do. And, I think some of that stuff has stuck around, in the agency. And because there was a bit of a culture change, we can kind of talk about how that happened, and how do you change culture, and how do you work with the administration to kind of buy off on all this craziness?
One of the things you mentioned that I think is super key to this, and one of the primary problems that we have with law enforcement training is that you talked about having measured performance after they left training. I've not met an agency that's actually put a lot of effort into or understand the need for following performance and doing a true evaluation of the efficacy of training after the training is completed. Did y'all just do it with basic training, or did you do it all with all of your training in your agency?
Well, it was really with all the training, but what we started focusing on was our department's in-service training. So just as a bit of a background, I retired from the Santa Clara Police Department in California. That's where sort of in between San Jose and San Francisco, in the belly of the beast, I like to call it. And being a cop in California is everything you think it is. It's exactly how you thought it was. The problem being is that we have crazy restrictive laws and a new law every month, but it's a very violent place with a lot of violent people and mental illness, and there's just a lot to do. So it's very, very challenging to do right. And so me and some of the other guys that were interested in this stuff at the department started looking at is, okay, what is the desired behavior we want on the street? Like, what is it how do we know when we did it good, right? And what does good look like? And we actually started just charting out all those things, right? Well, it would look like this, they would do this, they would say that. And then we backwards design that. Well, how come some officers do that? The squared away ones, right? They do that, and others don't. And then we figured out, okay, well, this is how they did that. And then we designed training to basically, get the knowledge that's in the senior folks that are really tactically minded. We took the knowledge out of their head and we uploaded it into the young guys' heads. And maybe the senior folks that had some bad habits that weren't into all the latest, like BJJ or any of that stuff, we took some of that and put it in their head. And we focused solely on use of force decision making. That was the first goal, because our hypothesis was people are marching through the streets complaining about the way police officers use force. In a nutshell, right? I mean, that's what it's not about fingerprinting. It's not about interview interrogation. It's not about DUI investigation. They don't like the way we use force. Let's just say that, right? It's right. The decisions officers make around using force. So we just solely focused on that, and everything that goes into that, from using tools to patrol tactics to what does a react team look like, and who's team leading that, and what does a good team leader do, to use of force law, and how does the Graham factors and California's crazy use of force law, how do they sort of meet, and all the stuff that goes into use of force decision making, and every training really turned into that. And everyone that's listening to me right now is saying, well, that's all great, but we have a lot of mandatory training. We do too. And then we also have a lot of discretionary training. Like the chief wants us to do a training about whatever topic is popular, human trafficking, that's the next one, or whatever. We did do all that. We would interleave everything. And somehow, some way, everything came back to use of force decision making. We had to do a domestic violence update. And they said, you got to teach them how to use this form and this form and this form and all these paperwork. Cool, we did do that. And they learned how to do it in a use of force scenario domestic violence call, right? That, oh, by the way, there was some first aid elements, and oh, by the way, there was all this other stuff in it. Because if you interleave stuff, you don't have to just do one thing at a time. So suddenly it's like inventing extra training time. So
Yeah.
that's what we focused on. And then I think maybe now the department's doing extra stuff on that, but that was really our focus.
Well, David, Bill, do you have any questions real quick?
I would like to say something. Well, the first thing is, first time meeting you, Dave. So pleasure. And now I don't feel so alone as the only Marine on this podcast. So it feels good. The second thing is, Scott, I was so pumped listening to your podcast. I'm not going to go into like my work or anything, but I actually, and I know I reached out to you, but I actually made that like required training for the trainees to listen to, and they said it was very helpful for them, and we saved the recording for the next couple classes, and I actually put that in as an assignment for them to do. And I think one, it appeals to like the younger generation for as far as like media and podcasting and stuff, but it was so helpful and useful for them to hear somebody else talking about it that's across the country, and they're like, wow, this stuff kind of sounds familiar, but it was so well articulated. So I wanted to say thank you for that. I really appreciated it.
No, thank you. That's an honor to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And and that was when, like I said, Scott put us in touch. And when I heard that, I felt like I was hearing the thoughts inside my own mind, because I've been kind of on the opposite side of this. I've been saying the same things that you've been saying since like 2000, when I went into law enforcement, and before that when I was involved in the training industry. And I just felt like it was falling on deaf ears. And one of the things I've been really stunned by in this last year, my Letneck Instagram page is only a year old. I've been absolutely floored by how many cops are hungry for this, and even civilians who work with military and law enforcement. I've got a bunch of military on here, but we have people in Belgium and Germany and Australia and France and Switzerland who are all listening to this stuff and saying we have the same problems here. And it's refreshing and exciting. I think that one of the things that Instagram has done is it's given us opportunities to really start showing that we're we're not alone in thinking these things. So how do we, now that we're finding our tribe based on our vibe, how do we start making those changes? So one of the questions I have for you is that when you started doing this analysis, which in learning and development, we have ADDIE, the analyze, design, develop, implement, and evaluate. You have analysis and you have evaluate that you've spoken to, and overwhelmingly, most agencies will not give anybody time to even do an analysis. They just say, do this, and you have to do what it is. So did you have buy-in from superiors, or is this something that you're just like, this crap needs to get done, and we're the dudes to do it?
Yeah, great question. So the area that I was working in the Professional Standards Bureau, which incorporated different units, the person that deserves a lot of credit is the training sergeant. So the department has a full-time training sergeant, and then there's different officers that are assigned to the training unit. And the training unit or sergeant was a true believer already, and he knew like the way things were being done was not like the right way to do it. But he was mature and smart enough to get into that unit and not just be like, okay, scorched earth policy, everything sucks, everyone, you've been doing it wrong, everyone, you suck, this is the new way we're doing it, like a lot of people would have done. Or send crazy emails to the chief. Hey, chief, everything sucks. I'm going to do everything differently. Or I need $1 million for a new training center, and just start asking for all this, which is how a lot of cops do this, right? They just
Yeah.
go and bulldoze people. And when I was younger, that's exactly how I would have done it. Long ass email to the chief about, well, I read this book and I saw this podcast, and oh, no, 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 no. And I know this about training, and we got to interleave and all. It's like, dude, no, you got to be like smooth about this stuff. And so the first thing that we did is what if we didn't try to change everything completely, and we just said, let's just change one little thing, two little
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
right? Little incremental changes, because this is shocking to people. And
Yep.
so at the regular training, the regular block and silo training, we would just change one little aspect of it and get people used to that, and then change another little aspect of it. And then that was like, okay, no one had a huge issue with that. But then we started outlining what is wrong with the stuff. Well, like, what's wrong with the stuff we're doing now? You got to have a good reason for it. Why does block and silo training suck? In And can you explain it in human terms and not in nerdy training terms, right? Not scientific terms. So we approached the assistant chief in charge of that whole division and said, listen, we've got some great ideas that's going to do this and that. And here's why it matters to you. Lowering liability, civil and criminal exposure for the department and or for the officers, and civil exposure for the agency. Increasing safety, decreasing likely the amount of violent confrontations we get into because we're going to outthink a lot of suspects. And oh, by the way, it's going to increase professionalism on body-worn camera. So what we think you're going to see on camera is stuff you're really going to like. It's going to look super professional and calm.
Nice.
The chief was like, sounds like you guys have a tall order. How are you going to do all that? And we said, hey, leave it to us, chief. And by the way, we don't need any money. We don't need anything. Because he was a nice guy. Like, what do you guys need to make this successful? Nothing. We need nothing. Thank you, sir. We'll get out of your hair now. We want nothing and we need nothing. Thank you. We're going to just operate in our little confines. So the first big training we tried, which was a whole day of scenario training, we made sure that the student felt comfortable, it was emotional safety for them, and they always won kind of thing. Okay. The first thing we did is, I don't know about your department, but my department, when you got to go to department training, I think it's 8 or 10 times a year, you get an email that says, this team, will be on this day and you're to be at this time and then here's the topic and it's first aid and a domestic violence law update and a legal this and that. And first thing we did, don't tell them what the subject is. Do not say what it's about. And we just wrote, be there on, January 1st at this time, this team wearing this subject, police stuff. Immediately the phone started ringing in the training unit. People saying, officers, hey, what's the training about? And the training sergeant would say, it's about police stuff. Well, I got to know what it's about. Well, we say, why?
No, you don't.
Well, I gotta prepare. What are you going to study up? So people walked in totally apprehensive, not knowing. And we started with scenarios as opposed to lengthy PowerPoint show. And then maybe in the afternoon, there's 1 or 2 spoon-fed scenarios. We started with, okay, how's it going? Here's the safety rules, issue safety equipment, break off into these teams. Here's this first scenario. And people were like, what is happening, right? And within 1 or 2 of those, we introduced simunitions. And introducing simunitions is probably, or whatever brand is, your type of marking cartridge. Introducing simunitions is probably one of the best things you could ever do to your department's training because it immediately gets everyone's attention.
Yeah.
Everyone is locked in, right? And what we did is we issued Sims gears and Sims guns with Sims rounds to all the officers. But to the role player, it's a blank gun that makes a sound but doesn't shoot any projectiles. So there's actually no way as a student on these first few days, you're going to get shot because we didn't want people to experience pain and then be like, I freaking hate Sims, right? So we did that. And the first couple times the officers swore they were shot. That guy, the role player shot me. Really? Yeah, I can't see where the paint is, but he got me good. Okay. Well, he didn't have any rounds, but okay. But what that was doing was letting them feel safe. It doesn't hurt. No one got hurt. It's okay. We did Sims. And because we had heard from years past that there was an incident where some SWAT guy went up in the rafters and unloaded a full MP5 into one of our female officers, legs or something like that. And turns out that was a training scar and she doesn't like simunitions. Who would have thought, right?
Who would have?
So,
Who wouldn't at that point?
You're right. And so we had to get over some of that stuff. And so what we did is small little changes during those first scenario days over the first year. Some of the scenarios would be like, yeah, there's a BJJ guy, or yeah, there's Sims rounds going off or whatnot. But some of them would be like, okay, come to my little scenario and I just ask you questions. And you answer questions where we try to do retrieval exercises with you. And if you didn't know the answer, we said, good. If you don't know the answer, that's awesome because now I'm a teacher. It gives me something to teach you. And they were like, what? Oh, yeah, I'm so glad you didn't know what the gram factors are because otherwise I'd have nothing to do right now. Okay, come over here to the Great Wall of Knowledge, we called it. And on the wall, we stapled crime, threat, resistance, escape, all the gram factors. And we just be like, hey, let's consult the Great Wall of Knowledge. And we make it kind of funny. And these guys are like, this is some corny stuff, but it was fun. And they felt like they won. And then it got to the point where, fast forward a year or two, people would walk in and just be like throwing on Sims rounds and being like, let's go get them. Let's go get some. You know, even the gal that got lit up by that SWAT dude I was telling you about, she was stoked about it. She walked in, let's get some. Where's my Sim stuff? Yeah, give it to me. Let's go. And I
That's
think, you
awesome.
know, that was because of confidence, right? And so
Yeah.
just building little building, starting small and incorporating little things along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. You said two things that we literally talked about in the instructor basic course this week: creating a safe place
Yeah.
and making things winnable. And one of the things I take it a little bit further. I talk about creating a safe place to fail. We want you to fail in training if that's what is going to happen, and we're not going to shame you for it. We want to see where your gaps are. We want to see what information or skill sets you're missing. And if people are afraid to make mistakes or to fail in training, then they're never going to get fixed. They will on the street very quickly in the terms of either disability or a gravesite, but we have to create training to be a safe place, emotionally, psychologically, and physically, but more importantly, a safe place where they can make mistakes and practice being right. And so when they make mistakes, if they don't know something, they feel confident enough to say something. You know, it's like this week in training, you know, I threw together this course. I didn't throw it together. I've been working on it for 6 months, and I had to retool the whole thing, and I made mistakes. And the first thing I did is I told the people, "Yeah, you're absolutely right. I made a mistake here. I'm going to fix it for the next class. This is a validation class. I know it's going to be some hiccups and stuff like that." I showed my vulnerability and my willingness to make it clear that, yeah, I know there's going to be problems. So when they got frustrated and they felt safe in my class to push back on me, and they said, "Look, we're feeling overwhelmed because we're trying to do this thing." And the thing they were trying to do was just a misunderstanding that I didn't ask you to build an entire 4 hour course. I just need you to build a course and present 15 minutes of it. That's it. And so, but if I didn't create that safe place, they never would have felt confident enough to push back. You know, you can tell a law enforcement class in their past experience by how they act on the first day. They're dead quiet, don't want to say anything, aren't going to push back, just waiting for what's going to explode next to them. And the other thing he says, making things winnable. Everything has to be winnable, but what winnable looks like is different depending on what the topic is that you want to train. I absolutely love that y'all used blanks for the role players and gave simulations to everybody else. That is an excellent way of getting people used to the dynamics of this kind of thing. And when they finally do get sims back at them, it's not going to be a terrifying experience. So that's one of the reasons that I remember you talking about this specifically with Scott Howell too. And I was like, holy crap, that's right. That's how it should be. So David,
Yeah.
give us a little background about your experience with firearms, because there's a juxtaposition between what you've experienced, Scott, and what David experienced with his firearms program.
Yeah, so I went to the firearms unit at the academy probably 6 years ago, and kind of the same concept. Prior to that, it was a place no one ever went to. Whenever you went there, you felt like a burden to the staff. They didn't want to be there either, anything like that. And we finally got a good group of guys that made the unit more enjoyable, and started to see a lot of officers show up and actually even train on their own, right? Unfortunately, we can't provide ammo or anything like that. Our instructors would go out and help, often if anyone asked or wanted help, or we just go out there and check up on guys, make sure they're doing stuff properly. And we saw the writing on the wall that people wanted it. We just had to figure out how to implement it without getting so much pushback from the higher ups. And that was probably the hardest thing to overcome. We were able to change a lot of good policies along the way. Over like the past 3 years were probably the biggest stuff, where we finally got red dots on our pistols. We switched from 40 cal to 9 mil. We went short barrel rifles and suppressors. And like you were talking about, is finding that person in the chain of command. The way our department's set up, the academy commander is over that stuff, but if that guy's not any good, nothing's ever going to get past him. So we found kind of say a loophole. The chief has to come down and qualify once a year. So anytime the chief was down there, we'd say, "Hey, chief, look at this cool new thing," or "What do you think about this?" And first one was red dots. And he's like, "Oh, that's pretty cool. Let me look at this and write up a thing and send it to me." So sure enough, did it all. And the next day he calls, he goes, "Okay, this is approved, and go ahead and order me one of these guns with the lasers on it." I'm like, "All right, cool."
Sweet.
Yeah.
One laser coming up.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't say he was, the smartest guy in the world, but
Right.
he was like some of the stuff we were proposing. And the hardest part was getting the information to him through the chain of command.
Yeah.
Right. At the time, several of the academy commanders that came through while I was there, they were a huge roadblock to getting the information to where it needed to be. And unfortunately, in a large department as ours, budget and everything was one of those things. So over the years, started to introduce practical shooting concepts in service training, and try and push that out to a lot of those guys. And a lot of them took foot to it, and you're always going to have the pushback from guys that don't, cops that don't want to be in service training or even want to be a cop in the first place, and shouldn't be, but is what it is. And seeing the guys that are hungry for it, we were always wanting to do. And going back to what you were talking about early on, we probably came off a little too quickly and trying to ask for a lot of things at one time or too soon. So having said that, we got a lot of flack from the brass in doing that. It was always questions: why are you asking this? Why are you wanting these guys to do this? And then also coming from brass, who's not a shooter and has no understanding of concepts of shooting anyway, even something as little as changing a small portion of the qual course. I'll give you an example. 2 years ago, we went from movement, put a little bit of movement in the qual course. Hey, you're going to shoot 5 rounds moving forward. You're going to shoot 5 rounds moving backwards. That immediately got denied because the academy commander said, "No, moving backwards on the range is too dangerous." I'm like, okay. And then I show them OIS videos of every officer involved shooting where they're moving backwards.
Right.
But it's too dangerous to do, in a controlled environment. So,
Yeah, I think getting the brass involved is huge, right? And somebody put a question or a comment about toxic egos. Well, okay, it's great. You want to be all touchy feely, but how do you get past toxic egos? Yeah. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that everyone at the department I worked was super jazzed about everything we were doing. Nope. And I'll give you an example. 2.5 years into this new scenario training stuff that we're doing, and we're putting so much work into it. We're super stoked about it. It's the first iteration of our hood drills, right? So you've seen like hoods come off, and then you got to react to whatever's going on. And we've got these two, in a mat room, we've got 2 hoods on pulleys, and they come off, and the officers react, and it's going great. And there's some BJJ stuff, and then the hood goes back on, and there's another BJJ thing, the hood goes back on, and then the BJJ guy touches you, and you're like, oh crap, he's going to attack me. The hood comes off, and it's me going, hey man, what are the gram factors? And the guy's like, oh shit, and we're trying to teach them to think clearly and to evaluate every circumstance, not just be primed. Oh, it's another defensive tactics scenario. Okay, so we're super proud. We're like high-fiving. The officers are digging it. And people always ask when I'm telling this story, what'd you do with the sick, lame, and injured officers? The guy that's got like a knee problem every time there's a defensive tactics thing. We're like 100%, and we had them too. They would limp in to the hood drill station, and we'd say, no problem. You got an injury? Hey, no problem. Can you stand over there on that green X, and perhaps can you still participate in the question aspect of this when we ask questions? Oh yeah, I think I can do that, and they would stand there and watch. They'd watch the hood drills happen. They'd see that no one's getting killed. It's very, very controlled. And suddenly some of them got cured and they were able to participate, and some didn't. And those are the 2%, 5%, 10%, I don't know what percentage. But we're not going to stop the train and benefit all the people that are starting to get benefit from this, and slow it down and go to the lowest common denominator for these 2 dudes or these 5 people. Not doing it. So they can stand over there. And how do you get them? I don't know. I don't know the answer. Maybe you don't. but we're not going to spend 90% of our time trying to figure out how to train them to the expense of 90% of the people who are now like kind of getting it. But as we were doing this and we're like super proud and everything's going good, a particular lieutenant came in. And we had some other lieutenants come through this training and actually participate. And we were like, thank you so much for being here, sir. The young cats seeing you rolling around on the ground and shooting and doing all this stuff. I mean, that just gave us a lot of buy-in. And so we appreciate it. But one lieutenant, he just stood back and watched us doing all this stuff, kind of judgy. And then we broke for lunch, and the boys and girls were out eating lunch outside in the parking lot. And that lieutenant apparently walked up to the officers out there and said, "This is so unrealistic. They've got you laying down on a mat with a hood on you, and then the hood comes off. When are you ever going to lay down on duty?" That was what he did, because his ego was threatened, because he's an older guy, he's losing relevance, and this isn't the way he used to do it. And so what he thought would be good to do is go criticize, insult, make fun of us out to the officers, right? Now, what did we do about it? Absolutely nothing. We're not going to spend time chasing that down. And I'm going to tell the captain, no, you go do you. It sounds like that's the kind of person you are. Anyway, back to training. And we just stayed laser focused on we're here training. We called our training center the lab. This is the lab. And it wasn't anything fancy. It's a shitty training center, excuse my French. But we called it the lab. And every time the officers come in, hey, welcome to the lab. Today we're going to experiment, man. Hey, what do you remember from the last training about side mount escape? Nothing? Great. That gives us an opportunity to teach you in the lab. And here's where you can make mistakes, and we try stuff, and some stuff doesn't work. Hey, what you were just doing, try that again. See if you can do the escape, whatever you were just doing, the flailing around thing. Try that again. Let's see if it's effective. Okay, it doesn't look like it's effective. But see, we're experimenting. So all the haters, all the ego, all that stuff, forget about them and just do your little thing. And if you, like Dave, unfortunately, if you just got admin just stabbing everything you're doing there, just trying to crush it, then focus on the little tribe, maybe like just the 1s and 2s, 3s and 4s that are in this stuff.
Yeah, and
And
that's
those
what we.
guys, right? Exactly.
Yeah,
They want it. And then I've always found those 3s and 4s turn into 5, 6, 10, 20, 30,
yeah,
because everyone starts looking at what the hell is Dave doing at the range with those guys? I want to do that.
yeah.
And then Dave's like, hey, come on over, bro. You can come be part of our little group.
Yeah, that was the biggest influence that we had is, either every new cadet class or and it's typically like the younger officers that are very new to this type of stuff, and it's starting to influence them early on in the program. Every once in a while, we would reach a guy that's been on for a little while, and you'd see that kind of that change because they want to be around other guys like them, and they're high performers want to be around other high performers.
Amen.
it's uh, it was just such a slow process, and I wish it would, like sometimes, as it is, admin would get out of your way sometimes and let them bring us all together up at once. But
Yeah.
it is what it is.
One of the things that I was thinking about when you touched on was how you did incremental change. So I don't know if you're aware, I put out a book called Creating Training for Law Enforcement a little while ago. And one of the last chapters is what do I do now? Because you know, I give this, perfect world scenario of a step-by-step process for creating training that helps in defense and liability defense, knowing full well that most agencies, most personnel, most instructors won't get a chance to do anything with it. So I give them that taste of what do I do now? And one of the things I say is incremental change. You can't force an entire change. You said that from the beginning. You come in strong. I'm going to make all this change. I'm going to do all these things. It's going to make a huge difference. You can't come in like that because now you're like bashing against egos. You don't know if the guy you're telling this to is proud of the training program that he created 10 years ago, not knowing that he hasn't done it in 8 years, but he doesn't want it to change. So you make incremental change. You find the places where you can make a difference, and then you start showing the results of it. I really especially liked when you said that, and I tell people this all the time too, you make it about the money. You made it about the money, you made it about the liability, and you made it about the prestige. So you made it about here's how assistant chief is going to look golden and look good instead of it's going to benefit all the troops. Okay, but I'm going to save you money. We're going to look better in the media. and you're going to shine because you stood up this program.
Right.
Yeah. Who's not going to get behind that?
And you know what we'd also do is follow up every training session with an email to the assistant chief thanking him
Yeah.
for supporting us and thanking him for having the foresight to do X, Y, and and all this stuff. And then when we would see good behavior on body worn camera that was, repeating the behaviors we'd say, we would say, "Hey, chief, have you taken a look at case number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? You should really watch it, right?" And I don't think it was anything too controversial, encouraging someone, the chief, to watch the body worn camera footage, but they would see good behavior, and we'd say, "Hey, I really want to say this thanks to you. You supported us. This doesn't happen without you." Then the conversation would turn into, what do you guys need to continue? And we would always have a list of stuff we needed, but we never really asked. It was only until we were asked. And then we'd be like, well, I mean, we do have a couple of things. Well, yeah, why don't you give me the list? But it was always really strategic. We never just threw stuff at the wall. And that was right after Uvalde hit. And he goes, hey, what do you guys need to make sure something like that doesn't occur here? We're like, breaching doors. And they're like, what? Yeah, breaching doors are 20,000 each. He's like, get two. I'm like, right on,
Wow.
And
Yeah.
and the guy that I was working with that was doing this was just a master at this. I was his mere underling. He was the one running this, and he was just so strategic about how he was dealing with admin, how he was dealing with the officers, how he was dealing with stakeholders. It was really, really smart. And I think that's one of the keys.
Yeah, you have
And
to build a track. You have to build a track record of success.
yeah.
You can't just come in and say, "Give me $1 million. I'm going to do all this amazing stuff." That's a huge risk. That's a risk that admin aren't willing to really take. And Bill was talking about this last week, and we talked about this earlier in October, leading up and leading without rank, and that's a lot of what you've just talked about, right, Bill?
Yeah, it's like such a refreshing success story to hear in law enforcement in a world of, trainers, and we're all guilty of it at some point, but we complain a lot, and a lot of the complaining that energy can be used to actually do things. And it's such a good thing to hear how the positive approach that you took and how it's doable if you approach it the right way, even with admin that can be difficult. You're always going to get better results when you go about it the way that you did, which hopefully a lot of people can take away that from this episode. And that is being a leader at a small unit level, and it speaks to what we were talking about, how like leadership is an action and not a title or position. So that's awesome, man. It's really good to hear, and I'm sure that when you created that environment for your students, even that example that you gave of the lieutenant like talking bad about the training, I bet you because the students were bought in, they were probably like, okay, like we don't care about what your opinion because we know that that's not true, and that's a got to be a solid win for you. I'm assuming that was probably their response. Yeah, I love everything about that.
Yeah, it really was a response because, I think as an industry, we all complain about the new guys and these millennials and our Gen Z. It's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Some of these
Mhm.
people are brighter, smart, better shape, more educated, than a lot of us were. So a lot of the dudes at our department, we have a young department like every other department. And a lot of those dudes with less than 5 years on, these young cats are super into high performance. They're super into personal growth and wellness and growth mindset. So this wasn't as weird for the young
Yeah.
dudes as it is
Yeah.
for the older cats.
Mhm.
So the young people that are hearing oh, when will we ever lay down on duty? It's like, yeah, they're not saying we would. They're putting us in a position of disadvantage to have to react to the freaking BJJ gorillas that jumped us, and we got to get out of it. It's like,
Yeah.
they're smart enough to kind of get it. So, but one thing I did, and I would recommend if you do have success at your own agency, is start filming all of it, videotape all of it. And if you're having, you're seeing some successes, you're making some cool training, get someone to tape it. And we videoed all of it. And I was like, okay, this is incredible. I know I'm part of something I'll never be able to do again inside the department. And so I filmed it all knowing that I need to share this message and show people what happened, what we did, how it worked, where we screwed up. And now, like I wrote a class that I do through Savage Training Group. It's us, the guy that I worked with the training sergeant and me, teaching exactly here's how we did it. Here's the outline. Here's the lesson plan. Here's the safety plan. Here's the videos of it working. Here's the video of it not working. All that stuff, because I knew at the time how unusual it was to have buy-in from admin and a cool department that was well resourced, that gave us all the instructors we wanted. We would say we need first aid and firearms instructors for this next defensive tactics scenario day because we're going to interleave a bunch of stuff. And they said, great. And that was towards the end. We had gotten so much buy-in. They were like, cool. And it costs money, right, to do all these things. And so, man, if you start having successes, just write it down, replicate it, videotape it, and don't forget to email the bosses and be like, thank you so much. Because the bosses never hear anything good. They just hear problems. So if you're the one person who's like, sir, ma'am, I just want to thank you for adjusting, Joe and Steve and Sam off to come be a part of our training yesterday, because this is why it mattered and you made it happen. I just want to say thank you. And we had some success, you will suddenly be the only positive email they ever get at that level. So don't forget to do stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point too. Showing gratitude goes so far. It's like, we get the I made a mistake letters enough, we get enough complaints and stuff, so that one time you get a card of thank you, what does that mean to us? And then you get into admin, everyone likes to dig on admin, everyone tears down admin. I was fortunate in my sheriff's office that we had really good admin. There's a couple dudes who are just trying to get off the road and hide, but for the most part, from our first sergeants to our sheriff, it was solid guys who wanted to make change and wanted to do good stuff. And so they made it a point that they would give praise down the chain. And so it encouraged people to give praise up the chain too. So we didn't really have a lot of problems with, I got to do a lot of stuff that I wanted to do because I was but I built trust by establishing that I'm going to do things right. I'm going to own my mistakes, but I'm also going to show gratitude. Thanks, man, for letting me do this. Thank you for sending me to this course. Let me tell you what I brought back from this course, kind of a thing. So, out of curiosity, where is your agency now with the program that you built? And how long ago was it that you left?
So I left in 2023, and where it's at now, it's kind of hard to say. I know some of it is still going on, and some of it has faded a little bit because the training staff that's in there now has, different priorities and stuff they want. But the core aspects of it, as I understand it, of the interleaved subject matter, where it's not just subject A or subject B, but it's interleaved A, B, and C, that is still there. And there's still a strong focus on use of force decision making, which, whether it was 5 years ago or 2 years ago or today, is still the same thing that people are marching through the streets complaining about cops, right? Is
Yeah,
use of force decision making. So that remains a central focus that everything else is built around. But the other thing is I don't want to check in too often to hear how it's going, because I would be heartbroken if it totally
yeah,
went back the other way. Don't think it is, because there's good people in that unit right now. But also, that's for someone else to do now. I'm not going to be the guy that graduates high school and goes back to the high school to talk about, whatever. It's like, no, you guys go take it forth and conquer. Hopefully we did some good work. And now I'm going to take what we did in that class and I'm going to go share it with other departments across the nation. And
yeah,
that's how I'm going to add value, is be like, hey, I got some ideas and some stuff that work. Take what you like, leave what you don't. But I want to show you some videos. I want to show you how we did it. I want to give you our outlines. And departments are now bringing this in, and we're able to share this stuff. And I feel like with that class, we called it effective police training, because not very creative, I guess. Effective police training class is, I think we're showing people like here's maybe a path on how to do some of this stuff, and here's the way to do it that doesn't cost anything, and you don't have to add any more training time. And here's a few things you can do once you do get some money and some extra training time. So there's kind of the poor man's version, which is exactly how we started, and then here's the deluxe version over here.
What and going back to that, was there a process even before, or something you had in place to get those following on instructors after you? Was there some sort of way to maybe, again, for your best hope that it carries on beyond you're there? Because it's something kind of that I saw in mine after the guys that were there that were doing good started to leave, and we had some guys that we mentored that would hope to come in afterwards, and initially did, but left almost immediately because of how toxic the environment was at the academy, unfortunately. And I get calls now all the time from guys that tell me about how much the range sucks, and I'm like, man, I had high hopes at least that they carried on. Was there some sort of way that you would, or that you were able to implement follow-ons coming in after you?
Well, the outlines were all written, which was helpful to people all in our state in California post-certified. And so unless you wanted to reinvent the wheel, it would actually make it easier on you just to repeat it. And, one thing is once you've done one training, you've done one training. Like you probably want to do the exact same training 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now. It used to be where every training at the department was looked at as a new process to iterate, like let's create something new. No, what should we train on now? We've already done firearms. It's like, wait, what? So I think having it all written was maybe helpful and an incentive. But the other thing is the guys that came out of the training unit are still at the department. And so they're still able to add value to the guys that are in the training unit. And the individual trainers, firearms, DT, all that stuff, that's all a part-time position in our department, and they haven't changed. Okay. So I'd like to think that they're still doing it, but
all
maybe
of
I'm just
is
being
full-time.
Yeah, it's a full-time gig, and they don't do it. And I might be being naive by saying this, or maybe I just don't want to look. Don't tell me if you changed it, basically. But I always thought, like, I bet you're doing it better. Like we did the ground level work to do some changes, and hopefully you're just building on that, and you've got better ideas, and you're making it even better. So like, don't do what we were doing.
Yeah, that was, and maybe more again on our side of the house, being firearms was such a specialized thing, with having a very high skill set to begin with, especially when we started to, like all of our guys were competent competition, practical shooters, right? Having a selection process for those cadre and stuff like that. After these guys left, unfortunately it went back to the old way. Is, hey, you got your in y'all's terms post article firearm certificate, which, as you know, is barely a standard. Now you're a firearms instructor, and let me go back to teaching you how to slowly press the trigger and feel the reset and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, that was a question I was going to ask too. Is that did you have was there any policy changes that were made to try to preserve what you created, or is it entirely dependent on the culture of that one team?
Not a written policy. There wasn't anything like that. It was just we changed the culture. I know of the department at that time, and I'd like to think it carried on. But also, no cop wants to write a bunch of outlines, so we've got outlines that I've got one right here. It's 40 pages long for one day. It's an outline plus safety plan plus equipment list and all that stuff. Because like, why would you want to recreate the wheel? Just do that again. And it's almost like a step-by-step thing. So I think that would make it easier. But, at the end of the day, it's like, can any of us control what the next guy's going to do?
Right.
And if you're watching this and you're like, dude, that's never going to happen at my PD, like not a million trillion years. Probably not. I believe you. Unfortunately, we don't. And until you're chief, until you're literally the XO, you're right. Maybe you can't change it. You might be correct, and you may be forced to make a tribe of just yourself. I'm going to be the best trained guy around, so I'm going to read all the books. I'm going to attend all the classes. I'm going to practice and rehearse all this stuff, and I'm just going to be a unit of one. That's unfortunately possible, but like I launched a training company, and my goal is to transform law enforcement training across America. And I know full well, like, it's not going to happen. And every day I feel like banging my freaking head against the wall because something stupid happened, or someone says something stupid, or something terrible happened. And I'm just like, this is too hard. Let's just give up. And so, but then like saw your guys' episode, and I'm like, I like these guys. These guys are rad. They fucking get it. And so I get excited again, and then I don't like commit suicide. So I just think like, don't try to control everything. Just control what you can control, and you're going to be a lot happier. And I know I'm in California, and you think that's some woo-woo stuff or whatever, but it's like,
no,
you're going to be happier, dude. Your blood pressure will be less. Just be like, I cannot control what anyone else is going to do. I just know what I'm going to do, and I'm going to make my little world the best. And if you'd like to come with me, great. And if I'm in a mat room rolling around by myself, then fucking so be it, then maybe one guy goes, hey, what are you doing in there? Well, come on in, but what people are going to do later is like, that's what they're going to do,
Yeah.
and wouldn't it be great if 18,000 police agencies across America where everyone had this quest for like the best training, and we're going to help cops save lives and save their own lives and all that stuff, but that is not going to happen in any of our lifetimes.
Yeah. I had this conversation with Pat at Apex Training. He expressed the same thing at one point. Why bother? There's all these knuckleheads out here saying that they're doing training. They're all trash. We can't get them out of the industry. And we try to make change, or we make change, and then as soon as we turn our back, it blows up and goes back to the old way. I was like, man, we're just planting seeds of trees for a crop we may never see. The thing is that if we can change the philosophy, the culture, the mindset of one instructor who goes on and improves training for his agency, and that training affects one officer who did not get killed or did not harm a citizen, or saved a child or what have you, we're never going to see the positive results, because positive results are never measured. Positive results never hit the media. Someone will know, whether you believe in a God or a great universe, a spaghetti monster in the sky. We just have to go into it with that positive feeling. That's one of the things I love about you, man, is that you have this positivity, and it's not hippie BS, from California. I honestly, that's one of the things, like you were saying, I love about the younger generations. They're hungry for this,
Yeah.
and they're generally happy people. They're angry about what's happening in the world, but they're not internalizing it. They're like, well, let's just freaking change this crap, because that's the bulk of it. It's like Bill, I think he's like 19 years old, and he's motivated for changing stuff. David, he's older, he's 22, but old dudes like me, I'm looking down. I'm like, all right, the world's going to be okay. People are going to make change. People are looking for it, and as long as old dogs like us are out here barking and saying there is a better way, the people who want to be high performers are going to hunt us down. The people who want to be high performers, who want to hang out with other high performers, they're going to create that. David's got dudes like that. Bill has got dudes like that. We had a we had a class of people like that this week. Started with 12, ended with 11. That's unusual for that many people to stay through a whole class, and they were all happy and motivated by the time they left. Now, how much change they'll be able to affect in their own agencies, they can do their best, and that's all we can hope for, really, right?
Yeah, no,
I
good
got.
point.
I have two things real quick. One of them is to speak off of Scott's story about how he developed the outlines and like why recreate the wheel. And I think what that does is going off of what David had mentioned, his question, which is you created like a succession plan without
Mm-hmm.
dedicating yourself to that. And it's so important because one of the flaws that I see in law enforcement, I'm sure we all have, is you get a guy who's really good at it and he never builds up a team or other people, and then he retires, and then now you start at zero and got to build that castle all the way over again.
Yeah.
So by documenting all the things that you did, like that lesson plan, it's very easy for you to have your team like, hey guys, I'm leaving soon. Like, you guys run this. Here's everything that you need. Now they don't have to go through all that legwork that you spent probably hours and hours doing. They could just pick up right where you left off and then continue to progress instead of to start over. So important. And with any position, whether that's like you're the two narcotics guys and you got a good thing going and you're getting a lot of arrests, and then they swap two of you out and you never got a chance to bring the other guys up. Now they're starting over again. So that's awesome to hear. And for people listening, if you are in a unit or any specialized unit or have any specialty skill, the second you are that guy, I think it's morally and ethically obligated, or you're morally and ethically obligated to mentor people in the event that you get moved or something happens. You're creating a succession plan at a small unit level. So that was one thing, the comment I wanted to make. And then one question that I had for Scott and David actually would be, with interleaving being the way that we found, we're seeing as very good results with in training. Do you guys see issues where people are trying to implement interleaving of skills, but they're doing it before the baseline skills have been developed to do so? Or do you construct the training so that it is then teaching them the skills during the interleaving of skills, if that makes sense?
Go ahead, David. You're shaking your head.
Yes and no, and it was simply the way like our department and our academy was set up. Unfortunately, the cadet style training when they came through, everything was very compartmentalized. Right, you did all the law, right? Then you went to combatives, and then you did all the PT stuff like during the main part of the academy. And the last essentially month and a half of the academy is what they call skills weeks, and a cadet class would be broken up into groups, and now they rotate through things like driving tactics, ride-alongs, and firearms. But then you have guys in tactics that don't know how to even hold a gun, or even the law on like the use of force that we for firearms that we teach in firearms, doing scenario-based training, and they have no idea what they're even getting into. And then vice versa, right? We have guys on, I mean, our firearms was a skill set, but it just, there was no interconnectivity between the skills across the board at the academy. Unfortunately, that was probably our biggest hurdle, and especially when like other parts of the training units didn't want to adapt to anything either. We still have like our tactics guys teaching to turn your flashlight off when you make entry into a dark room, so the bad guy can't see where you're at. You're like, come on, really?
I mean, technically, you can't see where you're at.
Yeah, yeah.
Look at
Neither can
you.
you.
Yeah.
Except for the 4 flashlights behind you.
But yeah, it's just when we were able to implement it, it worked very well. And being able to have all that written out and done, it went off in good ways where we could make that change.
Yeah, interleaving is difficult. So, like,
Yeah.
if you're learning a subject that is being taught to you in an interleaved fashion, it is more effortful than if not. If you just sat in a block training and if we're learning baseball and I throw you 50 fast pitches and you only hit 50 fast pitches, followed by 50 slow pitches, and you only hit those 50, you'll get good at the fast pitch. Then we'll move to slow pitch, you'll get good, and then we'll do curveball, and you'll get good at that. And then 2 weeks from now, when you go play the game, you'll have no idea what you're doing because you're actually only primed to catch certain or hit certain things. You guys understand what interleaving is. So it's good to mix up those things, but not before you say, here's how to hold the bat. Don't just like throw random balls at people and be like, I'm interleaving. It's like, no, you're confusing people. So we do need to spend some time going, okay, this is your baton. Okay, this is the end we hit people with. This is where your hands go. Why don't you feel it? Don't hit your partner with it. Okay, you got it. All right. This is when we use it. Okay, now let's go into a scenario or whatever. And the greatest example of that is handcuffing. If you go to an academy, they teach you, an instructor has a PowerPoint about handcuffs. There'll be a picture of handcuffs. It'll say, let's learn the nomenclature of the individual pieces. Now, this is a chain. This is the tang of the handcuffs. And right, why do we need to know any of that? We don't. And then we issue your handcuffs and we practice all day putting handcuffs on people, right? And the minute you go into the street and you actually try to handcuff someone, you fumble, you brought him out first before you had control, you're all screwed up. How that should go is we go, hey guys, here's handcuffs, touch them, play with them, don't poke your eye out, okay? Play around with them, you can't really hurt yourself with them. See, this part's sharp, this part's not, whatever, great. 10 minutes, everyone's happy with it, great. Let's go arrest this dude over here. And we go to arrest him and they pull out their handcuffs and he resists and we go, stop, what just happened? Well, he's resisting. I only got one hand to fight him. Oh, what's in your other hand? Well, my handcuffs. So what should you do? I guess I should probably just put my hands on him and control him before I pull my handcuffs out. Okay, try it again. That's how you should learn in context, not a blocked day about handcuffing. Oh my God. You don't need that. And in my department, we got brand new 40 millimeter launchers, single shot launchers, because the Sage SL6s or whatever we're using they're too cumbersome, they're too big, we don't need it. Let's get the single shot launchers because you can load it really quick and hit them again. So we have a brand new piece of gear that can literally kill somebody. So we got to be really diligent about what we're doing, as opposed to doing a day of just boring ass PowerPoint followed by dry drills and then shoot it in the afternoon or something like that. We gave a brief PowerPoint about this is what it is. Here's how you load it. Here's how not to mix up the rounds. Gas rounds look like this. If you ever see one of these, that's not, inert round, the real, all the safety stuff. Great, great, great. Let's go play with it over here. Not play with it, but let's go manipulate it over here. Great. Okay. Let's practice just moving, taking it off, putting it on, getting it out of the bags. We understand how this all works. Okay, now let's go to a scenario. And the first scenario is not a less lethal scenario. The guy comes out
Okay.
with a knife, and the guy comes at you with a knife or a gun or something like that or whatever. It's not a less lethal scenario. And the next one is not a less lethal scenario. Maybe by the third one, there is a less lethal scenario. Because we're not just here to prime you like, oh, everything's a less lethal day or a scenario with a less lethal day. And then you go do first aid. And then we come back and then maybe we mix in a little bit more less lethal stuff. And it's just, we're teaching sense making, decision making, using your mind, using your brain. This less lethal thing, this baton, this hand, these are tools. They come and go. We'll get a new one in a couple of years. You know, don't get too wrapped up in just this piece of a gear. It's better to teach you how to, you know, think about using this gear. So that's how we approached it, as opposed to spending so much time. But to your point, Bill, there's a difference between interleaving and just confusing the shit out of people.
Mhm.
And you have to learn the basics first, and then take disparate but related topics and mix those in if there's a reason to do that. And in our line of work, there is, because we want to teach you how to play the game, not just hit a fastball.
That's excellent.
So
Excellent.
it sounds like what you're saying is, if I'm interpreting right, is you can still interleave at a basic level if the instructor is able to control the training and apply and teach during, just like you said, hey, stop. All right, that moment where you stop them, they're not going to forget that. Like that's a imprinting moment for them, the first time of them doing it. And the reason I brought this question up is I was having a conversation with a buddy today about shooting, and he was saying, and it was an old team that I was on, and they were asking about like, how do we improve our relaying of, he was a sniper, and he was asking about how do we improve our, passing up information over comms without cluttering it. So his idea was to just use the comms on the range while they're shooting. And I was a little bit against that, because now you're confusing the skills that you're training, and you're not evaluating what guys are doing and stuff like that. So like make it a separate block. And that conversation came up about, interleaving the right way and not just throwing all these things out there without any control measures in place, and just say, hey, we're interleaving, this is the new thing. So that's cool to hear that. Do I have that right, as far as like you can do it at the basic level as long as it's monitored correctly? Am I right in that?
I think so. And remember that when we're trying to challenge the learner and be just at the top levels of their ability to perform. So if it's a SWAT team we're training, we can hopefully raise the challenge, versus if it's a brand new guy we're training, it's going to be less challenging. We want to be up here in their natural ability area, so that we're providing challenge and they're not bored. But very easily you could go over their ability and they become frustrated.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's easy to overwhelm people, and whether it's through interleaving or just the difficulty of the scenario or difficulty of the training, I think that's a huge takeaway, is that we want to make training difficult, but we want it to be a desirable difficulty. It shouldn't just be hard for hard's sake. Like, we could make training that's just impossible, ninjas jumping out, with Sims around. And so you could do that, and then 10 BJJ instructors jump you. Like, and we could interleave that, and that would be a difficulty, but it's not desirable. It's not producing the kind of outcome. Like, if you just made small changes and said, okay, I'm going to interleave some topics after we have a basic fundamentals down, and then I'm going to monitor the difficulty of this evolution. And think about it like in a BJJ sense. A guy walks into a BJJ studio and says, I got this card in the mail that says I can get a free class here. I'd like to get a free class. May I get my free class, please? Yes, right this way. Now, the instructor is not going to jump this kid and choke him out and slap his face and say, like, see, I'm better than you. Because the guy would go, yes, you are, and I'm never doing this again. Like, this was a horrible thing. Yeah. No way, dude. What you're going to say is, we'd love to give you that free class. Have you ever done this before? And he goes, yes, I am too. I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Oh, okay, right on. Now that lets me know sort of how our training is going to go. Where did you study? Oh, that's awesome, man. Come on in, versus the guy goes, no, I've never done this before. I am horribly out of shape. I know nothing about wrestling. This is my first thing. I've never done anything like this before. And the instructor goes, right on, brother. You are in the right place. I'm going to take care of you. That instructor is going to go about 5% resistance on this guy, right? Versus someone else. Same
Mhm.
thing, same training. You're getting a free BJJ class, an introductory course. It's the same thing. Same thing with firearms. Same thing with first aid. Same. Have you ever done this before? No, I've never done this before. No problem. I'm going to help you out. And so you're, as a scenario controller or the instructor or whoever we want to call you, the guy, the teacher, you're monitoring the level of the student and adjusting whatever you're doing to fit their need. And if you have a mixed group, I know it's harder where you're like, well, I got 8 guys here of various levels. Then you make it winnable for everybody, but you make it hard on the experts. So if you've got 8 guys come in and they want to come through your scenario, and the scenario is active shooter scenario, and there's a SWAT dude there and a bunch of new guys. You go, hey, SWAT guy, come here. I want you to not be mute, but I also don't want you to be yourself in this thing, okay? I want you to focus on their footwork. As you're going through the scenario, I want you to just focus on footwork because I want you to report back on what you saw after this. Because I just made it harder on you now. You got to go through the scenario and watch all their feet. Okay, cool. Let's go. Don't be TL either because I want them to jump up. Okay, Roger. And you're kind of giving individuals something to do, right? Or whatever. You can think of 1,000 things, but you want to be at the level of the learner, not too far, not above, not too far below.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we've talked before, Bill and I have talked before about introducing scenarios as a way of opening up conversation by putting people through, if they're learning and they have some basic skills, have the scenario that they get to use those basic skills, but then they learn there's a gap and then introduce the thing that fills that gap. So we were talking about mainly use of force training, putting them through a scenario that mimics one of the case laws, like having them mimic or act out Graham v. Connor, and then ask them, what do you think about this? What's going on with this? And if they haven't had that course yet, they say, well, there's something wrong with it, or I think this is okay, and then introduce Graham v. Connor and say not, and they understand it better. But you have to be careful. It has to be very well scripted, and you have to make sure that you don't go too far because you can't put them in a chaotic scene that's overwhelming and scaring the crap out of them, and then say, so what do you think about use of force at this point? Well, they don't know enough about use of force to know what to do in this chaotic situation, what their skills are, and if anything, all you've done is just breed fear and anxiety into them. So it's a very delicate balance. It's best when you have multiple basic skills and you combine all those basic skills into complex behavior, building those things independently. But I like that how you've done it by interleaving, completely what would be considered disparate ideas, disparate skill sets into you're learning how to use a 40 millimeter, and now you're going to learn some first aid. Why? Because we still have to render aid to the dude we just shot. His buddy pushed him out of the way and took the round to the neck. We have to be able to do something about that. So I really like how you do that because you're absolutely right. It's a new phrase, and it's been a new phrase for the last 4 or 5 years, is interleave, interleave, interleave. And you see how people are designing interleaving is like, that's not interleaving, man. That's block training on top of each other.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you've got to figure out how to do it right.
Yeah, and I think if you just take a step back, and I know we all see things through our own, what we really like. If you like tactics or firearms or defensive tactics or whatever, but if you just take a step back and it's like, what are the core skills that you really want cops to have? And in my mind, it is sense making and decision making.
Yeah.
I want to make police officers clinicians. And by that, I mean, before I was a policeman, I was a paramedic. And when I went to paramedic school, they taught us how to assess the patient, look at the signs and symptoms of the patient, look at the signals, maybe on the EKG machine or whatever, come up with a differential diagnosis, give them medications to try to fix whatever's going on, assess if those medications worked or not. And if they didn't, go a different route, perhaps this medicine over here. Perhaps I was wrong about the diagnosis, right? They taught us how to be clinicians, how to be clinical. Police work, we don't do that. We
Right.
teach you how to use tools. Here's the baton. Here's how you use it. Here's a gun. Here's how to use it. Here's how to drive. These are just tools.
Yeah.
That would be like when I went to paramedic school, they just taught me how to give a medication, how to start an IV, how to intubate someone, how to defibrillate someone, but they never taught me how to do it all. So you call 911, I'm the paramedic, I show up and I go, oh crap, I don't know which one of these to use. And you look like you're fucking dying and I'm getting stressed out here. Holy shit, this guy's dying. And they're like, do something. Zap, with a defibrillator. It's like, uh-oh, that wasn't the right thing to do.
Yeah.
That's
Oh, that
like
was
police work.
diabetes. Whoops.
Yeah, it was diabetic reaction. So, but that's what we do in police work. And then we are somehow surprised when we see cops performing the way they do on the street.
Yeah.
What if we taught them, policemen, officers, to be clinicians, to be sense making of the world? What is this call? Is this a solo barricade, hostage barricade, active shooter who's paused shooting? What is this thing? And what should I do about it? Should I even be here? Maybe I shouldn't be here. Because I can teach a monkey to swing a baton. With enough bananas, I could probably get it to drive a car, turn on the lights, whatever other things we're going to teach cops to do. But you'll never be able to teach a monkey to decide when to do those things, unless there was a banana stimulus, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to stop because this scenario is falling apart as I'm saying more about the banana stuff. So someone else say
Well,
something.
yeah, it's what you're talking about is I've used this term a lot. We need to build philosopher cops.
Hmm.
We need cops who think, analyze, critically decide, and are do more than just what I was told. We talked about this week too, is that we can't train law enforcement into performing according to a checkbox. Training is an opportunity to fill in the database of options. And if whatever they learn in training becomes an option that when they go out in the field, nothing is ever going to be as we planned. It's never going to be like the last call, but at least it's similar or close to or relatable to our database of data points. So one of the things that we get to do by creating interleave training, creating small incremental training with our people is we're increasing the data points that they can use for making decisions as opposed to just reacting. Because if we just teach them a tool, they just react with the tool. We see that all the time. And I honestly believe that a lot of the problems that we have when we see law enforcement looking out of control, it's because they were trained how to fight, shoot, and baton at the end of training, but they were never told how to decide if that was the appropriate use for that thing, because it's result based. And what you were talking about is creating performance based training instead of results based training. Tool usage is results based training. If this, then shoot. If that, then swing baton. But we have to get away from that because you only thinking people and only people who are making decisions can become philosopher cops and actually make decisions according to the facts and the exposure that they have. So, yeah, I think we solved all the problems tonight.
Great.
Yeah,
I got one more,
yeah, you're fine.
two more questions if that's okay. I don't want to run
Yeah,
over too much. So either Scott or David, but the first question is, and mainly for Scott for this one, but when you were creating that training plan for your department, did you, like, for each iteration when each officer would go through, were you evaluating the individuals as they went through and like giving them like a performance eval for that? And if so, like what did that look like? And did that change or help you determine what that follow on or next training class would be?
Not a written performance evaluation, but certainly a verbal one. And
Okay.
like to get our department through training, I think it took 10 days.
Okay.
So 10 days would get everyone through training, and it would have pretty much the same training staff for those days. So pretty much same instructors, definitely the same core instructors. So like scenario controllers and that kind of stuff were all the same people, and you would very clearly see the trends. And we would take those trends and use them to either go, well, we're asking this question and no one knew the answer. So clearly that's a good metric for us because we actually went over that, the last training, and I don't think it stuck. So
Okay.
that's a good one. We didn't do a good job on that, so we need to figure out another plan. But for the officers, let's say an officer was struggling with something, right? They were getting tons of feedback and also the chance to rehearse it a little bit more. So like in a defensive tactics type of thing, they learned side mount escape, back escape, something else at a particular training. And then 2 months later was another training where we're going to put them in scenarios to do all those things without telling them that's probably what they need to be doing. And there was some officers, they weren't, I don't know, where does my leg go? Or how does my hand, they don't know. So no problem. Let's go right over here and let's just drill that for a while and let's go over it again. So it wasn't just testing for a test and there's pass fail. It was testing to see, to interrupt forgetting. So if you do remember this stuff, this helps make it stronger because it's interrupting forgetting. If you don't remember this stuff, then you get an extra training and here's the people to train you on it. And it was, again, we looked at the whole thing with a positive light. If you don't know something, it wasn't like, never once did any of us say, you should know this, man, that whole thing. You're going to,
Hmm.
you're going to get killed on the street, man. Come on, guys, you're supposed to know this, man. Nobody likes that. And that makes you feel like a chump. So instead, every time someone didn't know anything or they screwed something up, we would yell and exclaim, good, great. I'm so glad you didn't know that, because now we have more information about what you need training on, and I get to do something. I get to teach you. Thank God. Finally, someone who I can teach. Okay, now come over here and let me teach you this thing. And if we as instructors look at it like that, it does sound corny and cheesy, but if you are smiling and you're like, this is great, I'm so glad you didn't know this thing. Well, when you were on FTO, would you rather your FTO talk like that or how your FTO actually talked? Imagine your FTO goes, hey man, that call sucked. Obviously you didn't know what to do, right? No problem. That's why you're in training. That's why I'm a trainer. If you knew the answers, then you wouldn't be in this car. So let's go train. This is a teaching environment. This isn't just a testing. I'm not a field testing officer.
I
That's
like that.
following up with that, what you're asking about, and just real quick, Scott, how big was the department you were working with at the time?
150
Okay,
guys, pretty small.
and yeah, so much different on a 2,500 man department.
Yeah, I
Where,
bet.
yeah, and I completely understand. It's just logistics at that point. Get them through some training, and I'm not going to see these guys for another year unless they come to a specialized training. So
Oh wow.
it's almost impossible to follow up to see if they grasped anything at all in something like that. And that boils down to a logistics issue and how many instructors you can have teaching classes and whatnot. Because we were literally 5 instructors for a 2,500 man department.
Wow.
And
Sucks.
that's a department issue because those
Yeah.
are easily solvable issues. You have
Yeah.
what 7 precincts in this agency, and each precinct could have its own training team, could have its own training cadre, could establish their own training tempo, right? So it's an agency that doesn't value training for what it could do. It's not necessarily that they couldn't do it. Not all
Yeah, I always
training has
thought
to go through an academy.
I thought 150 was a great size because it was small enough to get around everybody and do this kind of stuff, but big enough to have resources and money to kind of do it. And it was kind of in the sweet spot. I was really, really lucky to be there, and I knew it at the time,
Yeah.
which is why I was saying I was filming it and recording it all.
My agency was 120. So
Yeah,
there's a lot.
there you go.
It's amazing what you can do with different size agencies. But then
Yeah.
you get lower than 100, and it becomes difficult because every officer has 15 jobs,
Yeah.
and you have. And if you're a low staffed agency, there were a bunch of agencies around my agency that their entire sworn population was 5 or
Wow.
10. So they're not going to be getting the training reps in that we could either. Maybe that's the answer to everything is we just divide all law enforcement agencies into 150 man units.
There you go.
Awesome. Do you have anything else, Bill?
No, I won't go too long. I'll save it for next week.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that was a lot of good information and good perspective too. Like because my last agency was around 150 as well. I can't imagine the logistical nightmare of 2,500 people with 5. That's a whole other problem. So that'd be an interesting topic to maybe go have you back on one time and
Yeah.
discuss how do we scale these solutions
Mhm.
to larger because that's a whole elephant. I don't even know where you start.
That's a herd,
That's a
man.
tough one. Yeah, that's
Well,
tough.
the thing is that we have Jamie Gissel on. He's our other buddy who comes on this all the time, and he comes from a large agency, Mesa PD, and they do this. They have tremendous, but they have a chief who trains. They have a
Hmm.
chief who's rolling around on the mats with everybody, and he's showing up. So that I think that's a good idea. We should have a how do you scale training? That would be a great conversation.
That'd be
You know,
cool if we can have David and maybe even that chief on too. That would be a
oh yeah,
cool like
Yeah.
interleaving of
the interleaving of personnel.
just throw it out there. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we can only get 4 people squeezed into this, but I wonder if this might be a YouTube conversation. So
Okay.
I'm going to announce it right now. One of the things we're doing starting in January, we're going to do a different type of format where the first Friday, instead of being Instagram Live, is going to be YouTube Live. But then 2 weeks later, we'll have that same person on Instagram Live to answer questions based on the YouTube Live and the Spotify and the other podcasts. So it's going to give people an opportunity who can't come to a live and ask the questions they want to read, to listen, on different channels and then come in and actually ask questions because the whole purpose of this is to create opportunities for people to find solutions that they can take back to their agencies, maybe develop programs and such like that. And Scott, you're definitely on the list for someone who we'd like to get on a first Friday if you're up for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. Well, we've gone about an hour and a half. We try to keep these things to an hour. So Friday nights are a hard time to get people out. Scott, we greatly appreciate you coming on. Wealth of knowledge, great conversation. Thank you very much. We thank David and Texas Tech, Red Status Gunworks for hosting us and letting us do the live from their store today. And Bill, miss you, bud. We'll have to talk again here soon. I've been out
We'll
of
catch up.
pocket for 2 weeks, and I know that Bill's been crying himself to sleep at night, not
I've
being
been
able to talk
sad,
to me.
man. Been sad.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you for coming on, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you.
Take care,
All right.
guys.
Take care.